Okay, everyone, welcome to practice today. This is our Tara practice, my Tara, mother practice. But welcome, everyone. Um, we are coming in, lots of people from different places. So I see people saying good morning and hello, wherever you're at, different parts of the world. Um, so welcome to those who are new to this practice. To what I call mother practice, which is the tradition of the practice of um, the female divine, the practice of touching into, I guess, the female cosmic consciousness. We can call it Shakti. But I'll get into that more later on. But I just want to continue welcoming everyone into the space on today, on Halloween, also the observance of Samhain. And Halloween, of course, is just this reproduced, like, marketed holiday to sell things. It's you know, and it's so interesting to think about how many holidays that we celebrate, in the West, I think all over the world in different cultures, but I'm just thinking about the West, Western countries, America, and so forth. We have these holidays based upon ancient rituals from different cultures, ancient indigenous, observances, and festivals, and how they get turned into these kind of secular observances, right? Of course, the ones that I think about often is the ones that I think about are Halloween and Easter, right? So traditionally today, right, it's about observing the harvest. This is the fall. If you sit with me in medicine Buddha practice on Monday nights, we've been talking about the fall. And the fall is so significant in terms of these kinds of ritual, ceremonial observances, because of I believe, the such intense shift from summer into fall and eventually winter, right? And how fall is about taking a break from the work of spring and summer. In agricultural cultures and communities, you spent the spring and the summer growing, planting, growing, and then fall comes around, you harvest and you prepare for the winter. But in the harvest, it's a period of giving thanks, right? And not only is it the harvest, but it's also the shift of light, right? The light begins to change, as communities, cultures, societies move into the darkness. So here in the West, here in America, we have this time change fiasco coming up next week. And we set our clocks forward. We fall forward or we fall back. We spring forward and we fall back. So we set our clocks back so we get an hour of sleep next Sunday. But it's also this ritual observance of the light. And so when you have something like a cultural observance like Diwali, in India, which I've actually been in India for Diwali, I've been on the Ganges for Diwali, but this was like years ago, which is an observance of the light. It's a gratitude for the light and remembrance of the light and how significant light is. Of course, Diwali is coming up I guess in about two weeks or so, 2.5 weeks. But anyhow, it's just a little bit of warm up about ceremonies and rituals and observances. But today, I think back today, this is the multi-day observance of the Day of the Dead, right? So Latinx, Hispanic cultures are celebrating Day of the Dead this weekend, which is really an observance of ancestry. There's this what's that little really cute cartoon on Disney? I think it's Coco, if I'm not mistaken, about the Day of the Dead and the observances. It's a little Pixar movie on Disney, which I found to be really beautiful. So it's said that, the veil between this world and the spirit world becomes thin. It's very thin right now. And it makes it easier for our ceremonies to touch into that world, and it makes it easier for the spirit world, inhabitants of the spirit world, to touch into this world. So that's part of it, and so all of this, gets mixed up in our different cultures, in observance of Halloween, right? And so I love just to sit and look at and think about and research all the ways in which dressing up for Halloween, going trick-or-treating or going to a Halloween party is actually a part of these indigenous, old observances, right? Where the unseen world is really close to us, and because we're so unpracticed in being in relationship to the unseen world, we dress up, right? We take on the persona, the appearance of something else to trick these beings coming into the world. This is trick or treat, right? It's part of trick or treat, and we dress up as monsters and whatever to scare away these energies that are coming around. And often for people who have some intuition, who have some skill in mediumship, some empathic ability, this could be a really strong, overwhelming period for you as well, as the veil gets thinner. And we're practicing the mother today. And I think that practicing with the mother tradition really helps us to call into our space really positive energy, and also call into the space those unseen beings who are wanting to help and protect us, and who are essentially loving us, right? Who wants us to be well. And it's also a time for us to think about ancestry, where we come from, right? Who came before us. And I know ancestry continues to be something that's difficult for some of us. But I think it's imperative that we develop some experience of ancestry, of where we come from, the beings who are around us, protecting us, right? And to kind of understand what our obligations are to the unseen world, to our ancestry. I think for me, when I think about my practice, I have a debt, right, to my ancestors, because they created the conditions for me to be here, right? I'm extremely grateful for that. And being in the seen world, the living world, I develop a relationship with my ancestors because they're another expression of who I am. What I am. Their expression of both my mind and body. So I do what I can to support. My ancestors in the unseen world. Let's see, there's comments. I talked to my mom through a medium last week. Oh, and she said there are no crosses or Bibles or anything religiously iconic on the other side. That's correct. She said there's only a huge ball of enveloping love. Yeah, religion is what we use to make sense of what we can't see. But it's not about physical seeing. It's about religion becoming a way for us to make sense of everything that we're not, that we can't see beyond what we're actually seeing and experiencing. So religion becomes like a collection of signs and symbols that connect us to not just the unseen world, but to various parts of our experience. So there's no such thing as Buddhism, right? As there's no such thing as Christianity or Judaism, or even Islam, right? And within the Buddhist perspective, that's true because in the absolute, in the absolute, in the ultimate reality of things, there's no such thing as religion or life, right? There just is. It's just this experience of space and energy, right? But it doesn't mean that if we say that, oh, this stuff doesn't make, that this doesn't exist in the unseen world, that doesn't mean that we let it go. It doesn't mean that we don't take it seriously, because it's here for a reason. We practice and are moved by these traditions and paths for a reason, because they're helping us to understand who and what we are. And the more we understand who and what we are, it makes it easier for us to transition, into the spirit world, right? And to continue our path, right, in the spirit world, So for me, I go actually back to the Heart Sutra, which is, of course, a sermon by the Buddha, where he essentially taught that form is emptiness, emptiness is form, right? Which basically says that this exists and it doesn't exist, right? There's a relative that we're in now, there's an absolute, which is the truth of everything, But in the relative, we have to take everything seriously, because it's part of this truth says that this is actually happening right now. But at the same time, we have to develop a view of the ultimate and absolute that says, well, this isn't happening. You have to hold those views together. So as you're moving through life, going through life, living and loving and dying and doing everything that we do, we're developing the view that, yes, this is real and it's not real. And I have to hold both of those extremes together, because that's the teaching. That's the middle way of Buddhism. That I have to go through the seriousness of life and also knowing that this is an illusion. And that when I come to die, my labor is to let go of this illusion. To open up to what's happening next. It's easy to get disappointed transitioning into the bardo, which is what we call the spirit world in Buddhism. right? In the spirit world, the spirit bardo is often what I'm calling it. You get so disillusioned when you're transitioning and you say, okay, this isn't what I was taught, right? Even when we study the traditional teachings around transitioning in Buddhism, there's still stuff that like doesn't happen, but the traditional teachings around death and dying in Buddhism, so much of it is metaphorical, right? They're using images and ideas from the tradition to help you make sense of what transitioning is like, what death and dying is like. And even then, you have to know that. You have to let go of that idea that death is going to be a certain way and the spirit world is going to be a certain way. So, I think what we're trying to do, and I'm like in the middle in the process, I'm trying to make sense of this for myself in my current writing, for my next book. So I'm coming up with like languaging to talk about all of this. Like, what does it mean to live a life where we're just really in tune with the spirit world and the seen world, this world, the world of the living, right? Like, how do we bring both of these experiences together? Because for many of us, colonization, capitalism, patriarchy, and so many of these systems have disrupted our relationship to the unseen world, right? Because colonization, and all the systems that are interrelated and intertwined with colonization is really about only believing what is seen, and which is even strange to say because so much of colonization was done through the church, through churches, I think primarily of the Catholic Church, and how religion was used to colonize, but even that kind of expression of religion was about shutting off a significant part of the unseen world to those who were being colonized and pretty much killed, right? And for us to begin healing, we have to start reconnecting to the unseen world, to the land, which is, I believe, an energetic force that binds different worlds together. So you can look at right now, during, for traditional celebrations of Samhain and Day of the Dead, it's so much about the land. Like there's so much, there's so many festivals, so many ceremonies and rituals are about the land and the elements in general, right? The land plays a central role in this. And many ceremonies and rituals plays a really huge role in our work with death and dying and ancestors in the unseen world, right? Listening to podcasts, and it's amazing how many people have experiences with the otherwise unseen world. One person even talked about alcoholism and masculinity were used in this one town to suppress and rationalize people's experiences with spirits. Yeah. To suppress, yeah. Well, like we don't want to see what we see. Honestly, that's very common, I have one friend who actually has some strong ability with spirits, but but is terrified of it, of that ability. And I remember one time they reached out. They were in this space, and were visiting this space, and was what they called being harassed by a spirit, you know. And they knew that they weren't being harassed, you know, that this spirit was trying to get their attention because, you know, the spirit knew that they had ability, right? And that's always what's going to happen to those of you who have any kind of ability. You know, being spirits sense that you're like a lighthouse. You're like a light or star, you know, to spirits, right? And they're attracted to you knowing that they can communicate with you. And a lot of people, again, get really spooked out. They're really overwhelmed by that, and they kind of repress it, which is unfortunate, right? And for those people who do really open to their ability and accept their ability, you know, it's, you know, of course that becomes a different experience, and of course you have to adopt different practices to protect yourself, because you're not just like on and ready to talk to any spirit that comes by 24/7, right? So you have to have boundaries and everything. But my friend, you know, just kind of keeps pushing it away, and which is, you know, it's a choice that we make, right? Again, there's no judgment. It's like we do what we can to move through, but I think it's important to be ready as much as you can, to work with the unseen world. I am deeply thrilled by the unseen world. I'm not afraid. For me personally, I'm not afraid anymore. I was when I was much younger, but I was both afraid and really fascinated, by just ghosts and spirits, and even demons. So ghosts and spirits, you know, when I was younger, when I got into my 20s, it was definitely a focus on the nature of like demons, which I can't stand. I don't like demons. And again, I don't have to like anything. And then that moved into, after the demon stage, I moved into the deity stage, which is, you know, a whole other ball game right there. But at this point, because of just all these years of study and practice, I've been really fortunate to, even, you know, now, but for years, being in a relationship, being in friendships, working relationships, consulting relationships, mentor-mentee relationships with mediums and psychics. And I continue to do that. And, you know, just working through, just through different modalities to really develop a very strong relationship to what we call our guides. Sometimes we call them our teams, but those unseen beings around us who have dedicated, you know, their time. I mean, time doesn't exist in the spirit world, but like they've offered their attention to us to protect us, and to guide us through this life. And I think one of the most important things that we could do is develop a really strong relationship with these beings. And there are many ways to do that. Praying to them is one thing, making offerings to them. I set up altars all around my house for all of my protectors, and I have a very strong spirit animal that I work with, and so, you know, this is, for me, this is, you know, I do a lot of shamanic practice, right? Um, and I'm finally, um, I think, able to talk about it. That's what I'm writing about in the next book. So I think this is why this book is going to be very different coming out, because it's really a guide to the things that I've adopted and learned and studied that have enhanced this practice of Buddhism. Of course, the whole idea is that like we have to start expanding who and what we are in order to meet the intensity of the times that we're moving into. So I call in all of my resources. Again, this is the 7 Homecomings practice from Love and Rage. This is why I developed that practice in the way that I did, because I want us to start thinking and practicing with all the energy around us, right? I'm going to revisit that again in the next book as well. I'm going to do a continuation of 7 Homecomings practice in the next book. So anywho, enough of that. So we're going to do questions at the end. We're going to have lots of time for questions. So I'm not going to do a whole 2-hour talk like I did last time for Mother Practice. For those of you who are new, we use the practice of Tara, that I call Ma Tara, as the basis for our practice. And that mantra will be offered once we start getting close to that. For those of you who join me for Medicine Buddha, this is a very similar practice. Guided practice, working with energy, doing some breath today, working with the earth, and we're going to send some energy out into the unseen world as well. So working with Matara, Atarama, is really about opening, connecting into this kind of very radical, revolutionary practice and experience of compassion. Compassion being wishing, aspiring for the liberation of all beings, including ourselves, and it's also the doing of liberation, right? It's how do we get involved? And it's hard for us to get involved if we haven't done the work for ourselves. And so Tara enters and helps our hearts and our minds to open, right, into the experience of empathy. First of all, we're acknowledging our own discomfort. And everyone experiences discomfort. It doesn't matter how enlightened they are. Like, there's always discomfort. As long as you take birth in a body in this realm, you're going to experience discomfort. You're going to experience suffering. In the Pali, in Pali, the language, one of the root languages of Buddhism, it's dukkha. But again, I think it's always mistranslated. Because dukkha isn't necessarily about this overwhelming suffering. I think this is where people get really confused. Because people say, well, I'm not in pain, I'm not. And there are people who go through life and they don't experience intense suffering, But it's not necessarily about intense suffering. Dukkha is about just this feeling that things don't fit together. Like, it's something that keeps bothering you. It's like something isn't working. No matter how hard I try, I can't get everything to fit together. I don't get everything that I want and need, right? As a teacher of mine said once, I'm sure he got it from a teacher as well. He said that, dukkha, suffering, is like trying to put it was like, here's how he explained it. It was like taking a Tupperware, a container, a storage container, right, for food, and this used to be my problem all the time, where I couldn't find the right top for the container of food, so I would just get something that didn't really fit and just said, okay, this is going to do. and then you put it away, store it, put it in the refrigerator, and then later you come, you open the refrigerator, and that container falls out, right? And so when the container falls out, the top pops off and spilling all the food all over the place because the top never fit to begin with, and that's the way we can understand dukkha. It's this general feeling that something isn't right, and it's not right because we're actually living in an illusion. Right, so as Laura says, so it's basically dukkha equals awareness. Dukkha equals an awareness of discomfort. It's the awareness of things not fitting together. But we have to name that, right? So for compassion to begin, we have to name our own discomfort, and then we name the discomfort for others around us. And then I say dwell with these experiences of discomfort. It's more than just naming, it's also experiencing it. So experience it means that I'm dwelling with, getting curious about understanding how this experience of discomfort, of things not fitting together, arrives both in my mind and in my body. And then once I've really experienced that, right, then I say, okay, enough is enough, right? I say, okay, I need something different. And then the wish to be free from that discomfort begins to arise. And we say, I'm tired, I don't want to be free. I'm sorry, I want to be free. I'm tired, I need something different. I want to be liberated. That's where the energy and the consciousness of Tara arises in that moment, where you say, I want to be free from this, right? And then Tara says, great, but you're not the only one who wants to be free. What do other people want? And then you begin to think about how others who are also experiencing discomfort also want to be free. And then you say, may all beings be free. May all beings be free from suffering, no matter who they are. And the audacity of this, right, the intensity of this is reinforced, right, when we say all beings, not the beings that I like, not just the beings that I like, not just the beings that I love, or the beings who give me something, all the beings, even the beings who have hurt me the most, even, human beings who have hurt me, even demons. We even want Satan to be liberated. Everything has to be liberated. Everything has to be liberated from the dream, which is the source of the suffering. Well, part of the source of the suffering. The source of the suffering is our own desire, right? Our desire that leads us deeper into the illusion instead of having a desire that leads us deeper into who and what we are, into our own Buddha nature. So not only are you wishing everyone to be free, you go a step further and you say, okay, what am I going to do about this? Like, what is my action plan? How am I going to free people? Well, first of all, you begin with your practice. You begin to practice liberation, right? You begin to go through the process. You begin to go through the tradition. And then from what begins to open up internally, that becomes a source for us to move into the experiences and the lives of others around us. You can't practice real, authentic compassion if that compassion isn't first and foremost being developed for ourselves, in our own experience. And this is about telling the truth. Like, it's about telling the truth. Like, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what others are experiencing. Right? And there's still suffering in the spirit world. You know. Because one of the things that happens as we transition into the spirit world is that we, again, if we don't know who we are, if we haven't really practiced, then we still fixate on a sense of identity, when in fact we can let go of that identity and evolve and change, but we don't, because we don't know how to do that, because we haven't practiced that in life. Because spiritual practice is harder in the spirit world. I know some of you have heard me talk about this in Medicine Buddha, but practice is harder when you're disembodied, right? Because in this realm, we have this body that's grounding us. Even though we're disembodied, many of us are completely disassociated and disembodied, we still have this body that's grounding us in the world, and we can do things. So if I think something, right, it's not just going to happen. Like if I think, oh, you know, I haven't eaten breakfast yet, so I'm like, may I have like some pancakes or some waffles right now? That's not going to happen, right? But in the spirit world, right, whatever you think can happen, you know, in general. I know there's a lot of this, actually quite a bit of nuance that I have to kind of take out, but I don't know if I have time to do that now. But in general, and just in case this is the first time you're hearing this, the body grounds the mind in this world, right? And this is why our first thought, or anyone's first thought growing up, is to train the mind. Like, training the mind isn't something that like we're taught, you know, in school or growing up, you know, unless you kind of grow up in a community or a household or a family that's already super invested in contemplative based spiritual traditions, then you get that. But for most of us, most people will go through life not understanding what training the mind and awareness of the mind and body is, right? And then you get into the spirit bardo, you shed the body, and you're nothing but mind. You're nothing but energy. And if you've not done the work of training the mind, then that's just a sporadic experience, you know. I've worked with people, spirits, who have transitioned, and it's just a hard transition because the mind is all over the place, right? And not that you can't bring it under control, you know, you can. Like, it starts, you know, you start forming an energy body, right, that echoes your physical body that you had, and that can be something that feels grounding and stabilizing, but you don't have to, right? You know, and this is why we train so hard and practice so hard, because when we transition out of the body, we want to have agency and awareness of our minds. And if we have a little bit of agency and awareness, then we can shape our experience in the bardo. Like, we have much more agency. You know, and supported spirits who have understood that, who began to understand that, have begun to evolve energetically. Which is a beautiful thing to see. And then we have all these spirits who are just stuck because they had such intense emotional, mental experiences that they can't work through it yet, right, in the spirit world. That this is something I will explore, definitely explore more in the book. So in practice, we're sending this wish of liberation into the spirit world as well, into the experiences of our ancestors, particularly those ancestors who may have unhealthy, energetic ties to us. And that definitely happens. This is called attachments. Attachments, possessions. there are more people walking around, unfortunately, with attachments from other beings that I'm comfortable to think about. Like it's, a lot of people need exorcisms. Quite frankly, like there's a lot of attachments with people walking around, and attachments happen from unseen spirits because we're psychically, energetically open, and very strong emotion opens us up psychically. Like it's like you get pissed off or you get really sad, and that opens us up energetically. Like our defenses get weakened, and other beings can really slide in and take advantage of that. You've seen a horror movie about this more, more than likely. Where someone is so upset that opens them psychically to other energies to start taking advantage of them. And that's what happens for most people. A lot of people, I wouldn't say, I don't know about most, but a lot of people experience these attachments because they've gone through really hard emotional experiences. And you just, a good psychic, medium, intuitive can look into that, for you if you have some doubts, some worries about that. But again, practices like the mother, like Tara, like the 7 homecomings can help with that, right? It's not going to completely free you, because you have to get more direct energy modalities to really remove some of these attachments. But it really helps, right? If we may think we're experiencing that. So let's begin some practice. So if you look at your screen, there's an ask a question option, and so if you can put your questions there, you can continue putting like insights, observations in the chat, but questions can go right into ask a question, so they'll all be collected and everyone can see them really clearly, and I can see them really clearly, and I'll answer those at the end of our practice. Okay. So we're gonna again just move through this expression of Matara, working with a little bit of breath, working with the earth, but really, really working with this experience of compassion, right? And if you want a little more insight into compassion, I just got back from giving a talk at the University of Arizona, and that talk is on the YouTube. And if anyone wants to look that link up and post it into the chat box, that would be wonderful. But anyway, I just gave a talk on Wednesday about compassion. Really, it's the secular side of compassion, and this is more of the sacred side of compassion that we're doing today. So if you want a different, just more insight into that, you can take a look at that talk. It's only an hour. I'm wearing some really cute shoes in that talk as well, because I'm very proud that I wore a pair of cute shoes instead of tennis shoes. In any case, so let's begin. We're going to be also working with the mantra, Tara's mantra, as well. Tara tu Tara ture soha, which again, it's mother. There's so many translations, but I translate it as, it's Tara liberate us. Tara liberate us. Oh, Rachel, what does it mean? Rachel wrote a book about Tara. Rachel should actually do that. Rachel, are you still doing? You're still doing your group, right? Your Tara group. If so, that would be a wonderful space to work with Rachel in. As it's very much a scholar on traditional Tara. I wouldn't say I was a scholar on Tara, but I see, for me, it's just this experience of this deep, transformative, overwhelming love, right? And that love comes with this energetic experience that has an impact in the body as well. And this is something I've been thinking about in my writing as well, the ways in which the body is impacted by this cosmic awakened consciousness that's based in love, or just love itself, right? Cosmic, conscious, awakened love. When I began to feel this, particularly in the form of Shakti, it was really disarming and confusing, because part of what we're doing with the body is learning how to hold this energy of love, how to hold the energy of compassion. And sometimes I use love and compassion interchangeably. Right? It comes from the same experience. I love you and I want you to be free. But when we're opening to that energy, that love, the body's energetic vibration changes, right? Because we're energy and we're vibrating, right? And the lower the vibration of our bodies, the more discomfort we experience, the higher we get through practice, through, self-care, the higher the vibration gets, and the more we start connecting to higher levels of consciousness, right? And then these higher levels of consciousness, these different states of consciousness, we begin to touch into the experiences of the unseen world. We begin to touch into the experiences of deities. We begin to, touch into and embody emptiness. Which is always what we're going for. No matter what we're doing in the path of dharmic practice, Buddhist practice, we're touching ultimately into the ultimate. So to touch into the experience of the deity and into higher levels of consciousness, even to concentrate into one point of concentration, which is samadhi, that's all really wonderful, but that's not where we're ending, because we have to go further than that. This is, again, the Heart Sutra, where the Buddha talks about going beyond. Like, you go to the edge, and some of us go to the edge and we say, okay, we're done. I am dancing with the dakinis, and I'm talking to God, and and all the saints and angels, and we say, oh yeah, this is it, but it's not it. Actually, it's wonderful, but that's not it, because we have to go even further than that. You have to go into the emptiness itself, because that's where we're emanating from, is the emptiness. And this is where what the Buddhas, and the wisdom deities, like Tara, is actually inviting us to do, so go deeper. Like, allow yourself to be completely dissolved in compassion. And that takes you into the experience of emptiness, into the ultimate. But you can't do that until you go through the relative, until you do the relative practices, until you start giving a shit about yourself and about others. And that begins to open the mind. It begins to decenter the sense of I, the sense of self that we're clinging to, right? And then we begin to experience more space around that ego clinging, and that space begins to point us to the nature of things. Like, you have the space to actually wander around and say, okay, what's going on, right? The more you're attached to the sense of self, the less fluid you will be, the more settled and stuck you will be. But when space begins to open up and we start thinking about the needs of others, right? Never forgetting our needs, but thinking about the needs of others with our needs, there's a space that begins to open. And that space leads us, begins to point us, actually, to the truth of things. Again, Tara emerges out of the space. The mother, in general, like, the mother arises out of space itself. And when we talk about the mother in this way, we're not talking about the ways that we understand gender, and gender expression. It's beyond that. I think this is why this can get really confusing. The relative is about a balance, right? You have to balance. You have to connect to the balance of everything, right? The balance of light and dark, the balance of duality, right? The balance of the mother and the father. So there's balancing, but when we start moving closer to the ultimate, we may call something mother, or we may call something father. But it's not aligned necessarily with the same kind of relative balancing that we're doing here. So when I think about the mother in this way, I think about space. I think about liberation. I think about nurturing. Um, because that's what space does. You know, space nurtures, it opens, it helps us to be fluid. There's love that arises out of the space because we have the space to love. We're not contracted around the sense of self, which makes it really hard for us to love, right? To think about others because we're just thinking about ourselves. But expanding outward and saying, okay, I am touching into the experience of the mother. Not my mother, not my physical mother, but into the experience of space itself. Into this wide open freedom. Sometimes I, begin my practice by imagining, just being by the water, right? Being by at the beach of a large ocean. And I call this practice water gazing, just like sky gazing, right? But water gazing, where I just look at this wide open ocean in front of me and I begin to mix my awareness with this spacious ocean, which I imagine just goes on forever. So I let myself be pulled into how this spaciousness is actually encouraging my awareness just to spread out, to get wide, to get fluid. Or you can think about the sky in terms of sky gazing, which is a really important practice in the Nyingma school in Dzogchen. But again, it's the same thing, looking up at the sky, looking, and this is sky gazing works the best when where you can physically just go out and kind of look up at a sky, like on the top of a hill or something, or a mountain, right? The wide open sky is just an expression of our minds. And the same of the ocean. The ocean is an expression of our minds, but I like the ocean because of the water and the fluidity of the water, the movement of the water. Right? That waves or little things that arise out of the ocean, which are just like our thoughts, right? They're expressions of our minds, and they're going to go right back into the mind, just like a wave rising up, and it goes back into the ocean. So our ocean-like mind, and the waves, and the swirls of our thoughts and emotions are just expressions of the ocean itself, of the ocean mind. So let's begin there. Let's begin with our ocean mind here, as we start moving towards Tara, towards the mother. And just sitting by the water, casting our awareness into the water and over the water, the ocean. And letting our awareness like break open. And as our awareness breaks open, you're going to feel all these experiences arising. You're going to feel and notice thoughts and emotions and physical sensations. I'm just gonna just be here just for a few more moments, just as a warm-up practice for us. The ocean-like mind, very similar to the sky-like mind, just spacious, fluid, deep. There's movement, but it's not distracting. Just a little longer here. So I want to transition from here into kind of an opening mantra for Tara, which was Om Tara, Om Matara, Soha. And again, I love these short mantras because they begin to call in the energy of the deity that we're working with. It's like inviting the deity to begin the practice, right? So it's just Om Matara Soha. I'm just going to chant this a few times to really begin to open up the door of our practice. Okay? So we begin. Om Matara Soha. Om Matara Soha. Om Matara Soha. Om Matara Soha. So let's hum it now for a few times. And when we hum it, I invite you just begin to feel that vibration in the heart center. and we're humming it. Right? Just shift your attention to that vibration. That vibration is beginning to open the heart center. Okay? We'll begin again. And shifting our breath into the heart center as we imagine that we're breathing in and out of the heart center. And when you're ready, I invite you to begin to call your benefactors into the space. So calling any being that loves you, who's protecting you, both living, unseen. You can move through your 7 homecomings practice as well. If you're new to the practice, you're actually just saying, may all beings who love me, who are protecting me, I ask them to come and sit with me in this circle around me. And beings, energies, just imagine that these beings, these energies are forming a circle around you. When you feel as if you have them, or feel as if they're really gathering, I invite you to imagine that they begin to radiate the energy of care and kindness around you. And returning to our breath, imagine that you begin to inhale this energy of care and kindness that's being radiated. And you can imagine that you're inhaling directly into the heart center, and that energy of care is really beginning to feed and water the heart center, the heart chakra. And you can also imagine that you're inhaling through every pore opening in the body. So as if your whole body is inhaling this energy of kindness and care into the body, filling the body and the heart center up with this energy of care. And so allowing yourself to really drink deeply from the care that's being offered energetically around you. And so the body, as well as the mind, is being filled with this care. And I want you to concentrate everything up into the heart center. And the heart center begins to awaken. You can imagine that there's a white, warm light that begins to radiate from the heart center, like someone just like turned on a light and a light bulb, and it begins to like radiate and shine from you. And as we're moving through that experience, we'll begin the first part of our mantra. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Soha. That will be in, that's right, Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Soha. And again, as we move into the first part of the mantra, you can chant with me, or you can just continue to sit, but really just allowing the light from the heart center just to radiate outward for now. Like, again, you're absorbing this energy, breathing this energy in, and it's manifesting as this radiance from the heart center. Right? So we begin. Soham Tare Tu Tare Tu Re. Soham Tare Tu Tare Tu. So we're just going to move a little further into the practice. And I invite you to imagine that this radiance from the heart center begins to radiate into the unseen world, into the spirit bardo, into the experiences of our ancestors, into the experience of maybe those that we've lost recently. And imagining that this radiance begins to light the darkness that beings are experiencing. And this radiance is, again, the radiance of compassion, of care. And this is being energized, deepened by the consciousness, the awakened consciousness of Tara, who is just an expression of this universal cosmic consciousness of the Mother. That we become, as is the meaning of Tara's name, a star, radiating light into the darkness. We begin again. So jare tu tare tu re. So jare tu tare tu re. So to going to keep chanting. We're going to get softer and softer until we start humming. And I want you to imagine that you're bringing the consciousness, the energy of my Tara into your heart center, where you ask her to stay. Okay, so we're just pulling the energy through the mantra into the heart center for it to stay there. Okay. So re tu da re tu re so da re tu da re tu re so da re tu da re tu re. And now we begin to imagine that our benefactors around us begin to dissolve into white light. And that white light is absorbed into our heart centers. And you can stay here, just resting your attention within the heart center or the heart chakra. But if you're able to do just a little bit of pranayama with me, a little bit of breath work, I invite you to imagine, again, breathing deeply into the heart center and then holding the breath in the heart center. And as we hold the breath, it begins to intensify the energy of the heart center. And then when you're ready, exhaling and imagining we're doing an internal exhale, which means that we're going to imagine exhaling the energy that we've intensified in the heart center throughout the body, as if the heart center just opens and we just exhale this energy of love, compassion, and care throughout the body. Okay? We're just going to do it 3 times. And again, holding the breath there for as long as it's okay, and then releasing it internally, filling up the body. Okay? Begin. Holding. And just moving at your own pace. Coming back to a normal breath, a natural breath. Taking a few deep breaths to actually exhale out anything that's kind of stuck, left over from the practice. Just releasing it. And just sitting for, I'm going to sit for just about 5 minutes as a way to integrate the practice. So just sitting here, natural body, natural breath, natural mind. You can even return back to the ocean-like mind visualization and just letting the awareness of the mind just open and get fluid. Watching the rising and the fall of thoughts, like waves rising and falling from the ocean. Just for 5 minutes. Okay, we're gonna start coming back to the space and just doing some simple movements, just reawaken the body, doing a few shaking, doing some head rolls, some stretching. So I want to thank you for your practice. And I want to look at the question. If you have any questions, go ahead and just add those to the question box. So, from Laura, thank you for your ancestor comments today, which calls me to realize that my awareness of hostile ancestors is not the whole picture. So what are your suggestions for expanding or redirecting my awareness to connect with the supportive ancestors in my lineage? It's as simple as that. It's just turning your attention away from those hostile ancestors. And then you're essentially saying, and I've talked about this quite a bit before working with ancestors, but we can intentionally create boundaries, keeping hostile ancestors away, while inviting what I call benevolent, ancestors into our space. And you just literally say that. You just say, I don't want any hostile ancestors around me. Everyone get away, get out of here. And I'm only opening the space for ancestors who are loving me, who are trying to help me, who are benevolent towards me. That's how we begin. And sometimes this idea of hostile beings is really something that can feel it's something that can be reactionary, because there may be certain kinds of energies around us that we actually don't know how to relate to, and we just call it hostile. And I remember when I had this experience with the spirit that I initially felt like it was haunting me, and just really attached to me, and I was getting kind of like irritated with the whole thing, and I just, just kind of had to sit down and just like go through this. I had to have a conversation with the spirit. And then I worked, with my medium mentor, you would say, and it turned out that it wasn't what I thought it was, right? It was, the spirit really needing a certain kind of help that I was good at offering. And so it just changed the relationship. It was like, oh, you're not bothering me, you're trying to get my attention. You need something from me that I can actually give. And so therefore I did that willingly and joyfully. So it's like, just like my friend I was talking about earlier, with them, it was just like, with them, the situation is like, they're just not, it just scares them, right? And so every interaction with spirit is antagonistic, and that's not always the case. I also want to encourage all of us to connect to our guides and I want to call my team, your team, again, 7 homecomings is actually what that is, right? But your team of beings, like we wouldn't be alive without a team of beings around us, protecting us. I promise you. Like we would not be able to move through this world without the unseen world looking out for us and beings who are committed. These are ancestors. They're all kinds of beings, literally angels, deities, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, um, literally like all kinds of beings that you have never even thought existed. The world of the unseen is so unbelievably diverse. You know, um, if you know mediums and psychics, intuitive, spirit walkers, shamans, medicine people, like everyone will tell you that like it's not uncommon for them to experience and see something that like they have never seen or experienced before. That's the immense diversity of the unseen world. So we have this collection of beings around us, and we just start talking to them. Again, like I said, I have altars all over my house. I'm like cliche, like like just like a cliche, stereotypical, like tantric, so I'm grounded in tantric practitioner, where every fucking inch of my house is an altar. I'm sitting in my practice space, and I have like altars everywhere, and tankas and wall hangings and statues. Like I'm just like, my living room is just one big altar. Like my bedroom, I have 3 altars. It's just like, it's ridiculous, but for me, it's about honoring, grounding all the energies that are around me, right? And I want them to have a place physically around me to situate themselves, in relationship to me. So I have all of this, So if you're like a practitioner, deep practitioner, you more than likely have all kinds of stuff around as well. I have cases and crates of spiritual stuff, statues, and then when I go and hang out with Lama Justin, like when we go somewhere or take a trip, then like I just collect more stuff. I go to India. When we go to India, I'm just like always, and he's like always having stuff made in Nepal, and then I get some of that. It's just like, okay. And what I had to understand was that like a statue doesn't make me more spiritual, right? But it does support my spiritual practice. But anyway, guys, I want you to do more work with your guides. And the first step is just talking. I know that's really uncomfortable. I know it's like, but like just thanking your guides, your team is a great first step. Just waking up and saying thank you. Because you know what? Like you go to sleep. If you really, like, I'm sure many of you have thought about this. I think about this all the time. It's like I go to sleep and anything can happen to me. Someone can break in and, I can get sick or anything can happen. And what's protecting me? Sure, karma, like merit. Yeah, absolutely. That. But also what's part of that is the protection that others have offered me, other beings are offering me during times where I can't protect myself, right? So just thinking about them, dedicating merit to your guides and team is so important, I'm doing, in a couple hours, I'm going to do fire puja, fire ceremony, for my ancestors, right? It says Halloween is the day that I do. And I do ancestor practices often, but like today is my ancestor fire puja prayer work. So just doing that and just offering, making offerings to the unseen beings. So anyway, I hope that's helpful um, for everyone. Any other questions? Any questions? We're going to continue a little bit of this tomorrow night for those of you who can make it, but there still is going to be a recording of it, just like this is a recording. But we're going to continue some of this into tomorrow night's Medicine Buddha, which is All Saints Day, November 1st, which is traditionally, it used to be here in Atlanta, we used to do, the city that participated in when I was much younger, we used to do a requiem for the dead, which I don't know if it's happening this year, but on November 1st, the city used to do just kind of an observance for people who, well, the task force for the homeless, which I used to do a lot of work in my early 20s, late teens. We used to have this big citywide requiem for people who had died on the street, passed away on the street, on that day, which is All Souls, All Saints Day. So, anywho, we might do some of that tomorrow night for Medicine Buddha as well. But besides that, if there's no more questions, again, I want to thank everyone for your practice and for being here, and I will go ahead and sign off for today if there's nothing else. But anyway, stay tuned again to Boomer Sparsha. You see the website and everything there. Please support us in the work, and we will. We have some big announcements coming out for Boomer Sparsha. I'm going to be offering beginning in January some really in-depth practice around Medicine Buddha. We're going to get into some other stuff beginning of next year. So, well, thank you all. So you can get the recordings for Monday. Just go and sign up for the Medicine Buddha teaching, and then you get cycled into the recordings. Yeah. And so once you sign up for the Medicine Buddha teachings, then you can get, we have about 30 now. We have about 30 recordings up since we switched to this platform. Thank you, everyone. It's been such a wonderful day practicing with everyone, and one of the things that I'm gonna start doing sometime, is it November, December, I'm gonna start meeting in small groups with folks, with Boomer Sparsha folks. So you'll be able to sign up. We're gonna do a couple of groups, so it's gonna be different time zones that we're gonna try to accommodate. So I'll be doing, starting December, one group. In January, I'll be starting doing 2 groups every month. Just so we can get different people, get as many people together as possible. You'll get more information about that pretty soon from Cecily, who is our community kind of outreach teacher outreach coordinator. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to carry your prayers and everything into my fire ceremony in a couple of hours, and I'm just going to continue to pray for our liberation, for the liberation of this world, and that we continue to move through this moment of apocalypse. I pray for a deepening of our compassion and love for ourselves and for others. I pray for a healthy, courageous, open relationship to the unseen world. And I pray for our energy and our self-care And I pray that we get what we need in order to be well right now. Okay. So thank you all so much. And I hope to see you, some of you, tomorrow. All right.